The little girl cried when she lost her marbles in the desert. She searched the desert for 100 years. The little girl cried when she thought she might have lost them in the sea rather than the desert. She searched the depths of the sea for 100 years. The little girl cried when she thought she might have lost them in the mountains than the sea. How long will it take till she begins to doubt whether or not she actually lost them to begin with? Remember last time how I said I was struggling to think of things to cover in the pre-episode ramble? I'm very glad to say I don't have that problem this time. People are probably expecting me to talk about the 2020 Higurashi series we mentioned last time, otherwise known as Go. Or maybe even mentioning how I somehow offhandedly predicted, conditional clause, a number of things to do with it. Whether that be my theory that it would be a kind of, sort of retelling of stories we've already seen, as well as new content, which, if you squint your eyes and tilt your head, you could say I got that right. The honest context of that remark would actually spoil things we haven't covered in this retrospective yet. As well as going all the way back to the cotton drifting retrospective, where I jokingly said Funimation could get the dubbing rights to the series. Which they do now have. Although, as far as I'm aware, there are no plans to dub anything pre-Go, which, considering Go isn't a straight-up reboot, as we were led to believe, but most definitely the 5th season of this show and a continuation of this story, is a very interesting decision. There could very well be other rights issues that I'm not aware of for the first 4 series, preventing them from doing so, but I certainly wouldn't be opposed to this new cast going back and redubbing those previous series. I think the new dub cast is legitimately good, and I look forward to re-watching the series with these voices. We also have the 6th series, Higurashi Sotsu, currently airing at the time of this recording. God, this really is turning into History of Power Rangers now, isn't it? I believe I'm right in saying that the title can be roughly translated into Higurashi Graduation, which... Look, I'm going to keep referring to each series by their Japanese name for simplicity's sake, but I really like the title Higurashi Graduation. However, all that being said, I will not be giving my direct thoughts and feelings towards both series events here, or at least I'll try not to spoil things. If you really are interested in my opinions on Go, I recently did a podcast with my friend, the Bearded Karibo, here on the channel, and will likely do so once Sotsu is finished as well. Do please be warned, there are full spoilers in that video, not just for Go, but also for the entirety of Higurashi itself. I am more than aware that there are people experiencing Higurashi for the first time through this retrospective series. And in my personal opinion, you should not watch that video or Go itself until you've experienced Higurashi in its entirety and you actually reach the 5th season naturally. To use a more Western equivalent, imagine you watched the first Iron Man movie, then immediately jumped to Avengers Infinity War. It's not impossible to enjoy Infinity War in that way, but you have missed so much context in the lead-up. But no, I'm not talking about those here. What I will be talking about, however, is a very special little project that I've been invited to take a part in, and I know you lovely lot are going to enjoy. I've already posted about this on my social medias, in the YouTube community tab, as well as in the Cotton Drifting 2021 update video, but in the off chance you didn't see any of those, ladies, gentlemen, and that wonderful technicoloured rainbow in between, I still can't believe the words that are about to come out of my mouth, but I have been cast as the voice of our favourite shitlord, Keiichi Maebara, in a Higurashi Abridged series. I know, right? I believe it was the last week of 2020, I received a message from the head of Studio Weibo 7, the people behind this new Abridged series. They had seen the retrospective and were wondering if I'd be interested in auditioning for the role. After spending half an hour panicking that someone had sent me a message, I thought to myself, What the hell, give it a go. They sent me the lines, I recorded them, and within a couple of days I'd been cast. At the time of recording this, it's been little over 7 months since then, and a part of me still can't quite believe that A, I got the part, and B, the project is actually going ahead. I can't begin to tell you the amount of times I've jumped on projects for them to never actually happen, including my own stuff. I mean, remember How We Roll? What the hell happened to that? Invasion from the Other Dimension? Didn't even get started, mate. Detective Noir? Oh, wait, no, I'm working on that one. I hope that doesn't go south. Again, at the time of recording, there is only a trailer out, which will be linked in the card on screen now, as well as at the end of the video, although as soon as the first episode drops, I will change the link to that. This is a new experience for me, and I am taking it deadly seriously. Hell, it took me 6.5 hours to record my lines, and between doing the trailer and the episode, I made conscious decisions in changing Keiichi's voice ever so slightly. The one I used in the trailer was a bit too nasally and cartoony, in my opinion. It felt out of place compared to our other wonderful voice talent. And this isn't me trying to kiss up to the others or anything. I do legitimately think my co-stars have been cast well, the ones I've heard so far at least. They all sound like their characters, like their voices line up with their faces. It just makes sense to me. Personally, I do feel like my performance is the odd one out. Maybe that's just me being ultra critical of myself, but I feel like I've got some ground to cover to not let the side down. Admittedly, this is the first real performance I've done since Christmas of 2014, but this isn't the time or the place to go over those events. Again. I'm not trying to bait compliments here. I know how this must be coming across, but I'm being truly honest here. And I'm about to get a lot more honest in a couple of minutes. I will say, though, I'm personally very happy with the scene between Keiichi and Mion, where he calls her out on all the stuff that's been going on. I think that's my best performance in this first episode. As well as the 4 minutes of grunting I did to do the baseball bit. Regardless of my personal feelings on how I've done so far, I know it would mean the absolute world to everyone involved in the project if you lovely lot could head over to Studio Weibo 7 and show them your support. They've been working really hard for many months now and deserve your viewership. I am also told there might be 1 or 2 sly references to the retrospective sprinkled throughout the series. But there's only one way to really find out, isn't there? But yes, I am very much looking forward to working with these fine, wonderful weebs for the foreseeable future. And I hope I can provide a suitable enough performance for this little scrub lord. With all that said and done, it's about time we get to the main attraction. The reason you're all here. Welcome, my friends, to Higurashi, the anime retrospective. The eye-opening arc. I have not been looking forward to this. Since last time, we've had a whole bunch of new people join us, thanks to the advent of Go. And possibly might again with Sotsu. Jeez. Honestly, I never expected this series to blow up in the way it kind of has this past year. At the end of the day, I'm just making the kind of content I think I would like to watch. If other people enjoy it, then that's just a bonus. Of course, if we're being completely honest here, one of the other initial reasons I started making these videos was out of a selfish desire to get some friends to check out the show. And while yes, some of my friends have watched this series, and even gone on to watch the show itself, you know who you are, those initial 3 friends who I made this for, to my knowledge, still haven't watched these videos, or the series itself. Thanks guys, it's nice to know you support me. It's not like I put a lot of work into these or anything. Regardless of their viewership, it is extremely humbling to have you all come along on this journey with me, both Higurashi veterans and newbies alike. Hell, when I was writing this, the Cotton Drifting retrospective had only just reached 10,000 views, with last year's time-wasting arc absolutely stomping its peers in terms of views collected over time at just under 8k in under a year. Couple the increase in viewership with the abundance of comments I've received over the years, saying how excited they are to see my coverage of the eye-opening arc, then I think you can understand why I've been a little apprehensive as to actually cover this arc. An arc that I previously didn't particularly hold in high regard. I'm not trying to say that the eye-opening arc is bad. What I'm trying to say is that I feel like there's a fair amount of expectation on this video for an arc that I have little to no expectation for. And I'd be lying if I didn't say that's a little intimidating. While I'm fundamentally making these for me, like I have been doing for the past couple of years now, I do still feel this almost ominous pressure to make not only a good video that fully digests the nuance of this arc and its leading character, but also please the people who have been eagerly awaiting for this entry. And I'm not sure I can meet that expectation. I guess what I'm trying to say is, if this doesn't quite meet your expectation, or reaches the same level of quality as the previous entries, then do please forgive me. There is a lot to cover with this one. And I'm not gonna lie, I got a little confused and tired with it. Anyway, we've got 6 episodes to get through this time, so we better get a shift on. While we don't get a scary intro this time, we certainly get a shocking one. We see Shion dragging Mion into the Sonozaki torture chamber, with their grandmother, Oreo, tied up in the corner. Well, this is certainly going to be a cheerful saga, isn't it? Our story begins not in June of 1983, but sometime in 1982. Ah, the 1980s. Where? Sweet dreams are made of these. We join Shion as she commits a daring escape from her boarding school, St. Lucia, where she's picked up by her bodyguard, carer person, Kazai.
It's been a long time since I've tasted freedom.
If that isn't the biggest mood of everyone on this planet right now, I don't know what is! As they drive off, we learn that while Mion and Shion are identical in almost every way, Shion has been treated as an outsider by her family since birth. Typically, when twin heirs are born into the Sonozaki family, the younger is killed mere moments after being born, to avoid a disaster down the road, more likely to avoid bickering and infighting as to which one becomes the head of the family. For whatever reason, Shion was spared.
Nice family, huh?
I mean, the simple fact you're alive proves that someone at least cares. Sure, you've been thrown to the wayside, but you've been given a chance at life, something your ancestors would never even have considered. And yes, that's still messed up, but you're alive. In fact, knowing who it is who allowed Shion to live makes me wonder if she was born with a twin herself and wanted to give both Mion and Shion a chance at life. 30 seconds in and already I'm asking questions I know this adaptation isn't going to give me the answers to. For better or worse. Kazai points out that if they return to Okinomiya, then it's only a matter of time before the rest of the Sonozaki family find out that she left the school. However, Shion has a cunning plan.
I've got a plan so cunning you could put a tail on it and call it a weasel.
Hello, Sonozaki House! Good morning. Tell me, do you know who this is?
Oh my god, it's the Spanish Inquisition! What? No, it's me, Shion.
Oh!
The two catch up, showing that if they hadn't been separated so much growing up, they'd likely have been really close.
Did you run away from that school? I hated that uptight place.
Just how bad was it anyway?
Get this right. They have a prison in the school basement. A prison?
Yeah.
For the students?
Yep. How many nights did you spend in there?
Kazai, how long was I away?
About 2 years?
About 2 years.
Damn. We should make a note and tell everyone we know never to go to St. Lucia's.
I know, right? Especially our close group of friends.
And potential friends.
I mean, wouldn't it suck if someone we knew went there, had a terrible time, made poor, brash, but understandable decisions, and fucked over our happily ever after?
Shion wants to be able to sustain herself financially, so calls in a favour from her uncle Yoshiro, who just so happens to run a little cafe called Angel Mort, where the outfits are sweet and the food is wonderfully impractical. Wait. The plan is for Shion to work for her uncle, and if anyone asks who she is, they just tell them that she's Mion. This unsinkable plan was brought to you by the same guy who designed the Titanic. She asks if anything has happened while she's been away, leading the topic onto Oyashiro's curse. She's already aware about the dam construction manager being lynched and heard about the couple who fell from the viewing platform. Here she learns about the head priest's sudden death. Head priest's sudden death. Good God. Here she learns about the head priest's mysterious death and his wife drowning herself. The events of the last 3 cotton driftings clearly stick in Shion's mind, as, sometime later, she meets up with Mion in a library to talk about theories. Yeah, way to keep up the illusion that you two are the same person. Shion points out how convenient it is that all 3 cases happen 1 year apart, and also happen to fit the curse profile. Remembering that a couple people had some issues with the head priest, Mion tells Shion that it likely stemmed from him standing up for the Hojo family, who were in favour of the dam's construction, which naturally made them very unpopular with the village people.
Shame on you! Shame on you! Shame on you and the children too! Shame on you! Shame on you! Shame on you and the children too! Why are we dancing? I don't know.
The priest was the only person to show them any kindness, which isn't exactly the best look when you remember that, being a Furude, means he's not only part of the 3 great families who are trying to rally the townsfolk together, but also, spiritually speaking, the conduit between Oyashiro and the people. Shion gives him credit for taking a neutral stance in the dam war, while Mion disagrees, saying that he should have gone along with everyone else. Considering his position, he was essentially a role model, and his neutral stance caused more damage than it did good. Shion comments that Mion's shaping up nicely to take over as head of the Sonozaki family, meant more as a dig at her rather than as a compliment. Mion replying that she's simply looking at it the same way Oreo would.
So you could say she's playing devil's advocate? Because there's a Japanese character for demon in her name? So she is literally being a devil's advocate? Well, I think it's funny.
You know, you could do that too, Shion. You sure are a funny one, sis. It's your role to take after Granny, not mine.
As Shion gets up to leave, she reassures Mion that there's no bad blood between them, and they should do their best to be who they are.
What an odd thing to say.
Interesting word choice there, Shion. But we'll get to that later. Assumedly, later that night, Shion gets a call from Mion, telling her that Oreo has learned about her leaving the school, and has ordered the entire family to bring her in if/when they find her.
How did she figure out I was here? Well, you did run away from a boarding school. And they kind of phoned our parents. Oh, right, yeah. Should probably have thought about that.
Shion is kind of nonchalant about the whole thing, but knows she's going to have to lie low for a while. So she heads out the next day, disguised as Mion, to pick up some supplies.
Alright, I got all the toilet paper from the last 3 stores. Time to hit up the next one. Oh dear, I really am in some dire need of some toilet paper.
As she heads off, one of her bags gets snagged on an awkwardly parked bike. Naturally, she kicks the damn thing. Just as their owners turn up. And it's the 3 dicks from last time. Shithead, Curly, and Adolf.
Scheiße!
Backing her into a corner, they demand compensation. As she goes to grab her little friend Shocky,
And why do they call you that?
she's saved by a mysterious stranger.
Just leave her alone, okay?
Next you'll be telling me that, God, Satoshi looks like Keiichi as well, except he's blonde or something.
Okay, I was joking when I said Keiichi's face was generic enough to be plastered on 2 other characters, but now a 3rd? Come on! All you've done is change the hair and eye colour. Again!
At this point, I'm more convinced that Keiichi and Satoshi are related. Akasaka is their dad, and random background child number 3 is their younger brother. And yes, I am more than aware of what happens in Kira episode 1. That's what makes this worse. Open up, Oni-chan.
No, Satoshi-kun, Yamate!
Oh! Then by that notion, does that mean we're related? What? No, we're 2 completely different people. I don't know, I think there's a fair few similarities between us.
Oh yeah, like what?
Well, we're the same height, same build, same hair color, same stupid face. Ow. And while I've only taken these off once, we have the same eye color. So? I've been told I look like a combination of David Tennant and Matt Smith, to being straight up compared to Richard Hammond, Hugh Laurie, and even Tom Cruise. What's your point? Don't forget that comment that said you look like that Keiichi boy.
So you think I look like Keiichi?
Grow your hair out and it could work.
So you're saying I look generic then?
Yeah. General, go to your room. I don't have a room. I live in the cupboard under the stairs. Then go to the cupboard under the stairs, then. Okay.
Satoshi gets knocked on his ass, but the bully Scarpa as a policeman comes running after them.
Hey there, Mion. Are you okay?
Oh my god, he's got a dumb voice as well.
You know who else has a dumb voice?
General, cupboard! Now!
Satoshi mistakes Shion for Mion, naturally, and asks if she's alright, causing her to blush. That night, Shion gets the deets about Satoshi from Mion, learns that he's usually a bit spacey, that his sister Satoko is more reliable, and that they're the kids of the second-year curse victims. She explains how Satoshi and Satoko moved in with their aunt and uncle who, if you remember the events of curse killing, regularly beat the pair. Mion guesses that the aunt and uncle are catching flack for taking in the kids of the couple who supported the dam project. Though I think it doesn't help that they also have the last name Hojo, so they're going to be associated with them regardless. Mion even comments on the fact that the pair didn't even want to take the kids in, which makes me once again ask why they took them in anyway. Were they forced to by law? I mean, I can't speak for the aunt, but I honestly wouldn't call Teppei Hojo a law-abiding citizen. I would honestly expect him to straight up abandon the kids without a second thought. You know, like he eventually does anyway. I'm sorry to bring this up again, it's just really weird to me, considering it feels so out of character for him to even take responsibility for them in the first place. I mean, ultimately it doesn't really matter in the grand scale of things, but whatever. Shion asks if Satoshi is exhausted all the time, what with the constant stress and anxiety he's being put through, though Mion admits she hasn't really noticed, given his absent-mindedness. Remembering how he stood up for her, she guesses that he's doing the same for Satoko, before egging Mion to tell her more. We smash cut to sometime later, where Shion, disguised as Mion, is bringing snacks to the Hinamizawa Fighters baseball team, as well as Dr. Irei. At some point, she's become the team's manager. Because I guess lying low entails getting an outdoor hobby. But I think we all know why she's really here.
Nice hit!
What's the female equivalent of a simp? Or is simp unisex?
The coach comments that if Satoshi was able to keep his head in the game, he'd actually be really good.
But unfortunately, his heart is a little too sensitive sometimes.
Why, just the other day, one of the boys told him his shoe was untied, and he just started crying. He completely forgot he was wearing Velcro.
It's reinforced that his home life isn't great and how he's bottling things up inside. The coach is getting really concerned for him, since Satoshi recently asked to quit the team, more than likely out of guilt for leaving Satoko alone with their aunt and uncle for so long. At that moment, baseball stuff happens, meaning Satoshi lost. Or something. Sorry, I don't know sports.
That was it. That was the last day Satoshi ever showed up for baseball.
Okay, look, I know this is meant to be some big emotional gut punch, but I'm sorry, every time I hear it, it just sounds so goddamn silly. That was it. That was the last time he played baseball.
As Shion leaves, she's mistaken as Mion again, as we're greeted by Best Girl.
Oh my god, Renna! It feels like literal years since I last saw you. How are you, sweetie?
Wow, it's really pouring.
I wish I knew what that was like! Fucking plants needing fucking water and shit. As they wait at a familiar-looking bus stop, Renna, in her all-knowing amazingness, knows that Mion, conditional clause, has a crush on Satoshi, which Shion admits to. Renna suggests that if she smiles for Satoshi, then it might make him feel better, as well as reassuring her that he might pick up the bat again someday, once he's finished working his part-time job, which he's only doing to save up money, but should be done by Satoko's birthday. In a very drastic leap of logic, Shion starts blaming Satoko for Satoshi's well-being, saying she's become too dependent, with Renna saying she thinks Satoshi might agree. He's actually admitted to Renna that looking after Satoko was taking its toll on him. Shion comments that Satoshi seems to trust her to be able to talk about it, though Renna thinks he only finds it easy thanks to their connection, through being cursed by Oyashiro. She knows what he's currently going through. The presence of someone always one step behind you, watching over you as you sleep, waiting for you to confess your sins. While there isn't an obvious reason why Satoshi should be cursed, he does have a deep desire to leave the village. something Oyashiro doesn't approve of. Shion, deeply concerned for her bae, asks Mion if she can go in her place to school the next day. As she arrives, she greets Satoshi and Satoko, who are both... oh... Lunch rolls around, where she tries to invite Satoshi to eat with her, but he's less than interested, leaving the room.
How many times do I have to tell you guys? Lunch is the only time I have. You could at least leave me alone for that.
When else am I supposed to jack off? But you can jack off to me! I am a literal child. Satoko accidentally drops her lunch on the floor, bursting into tears. As Shion angrily clears up Satoko's lunch, she cries out for her big brother. Shion decides that the best course of action is to casually throw Satoko halfway across the classroom.
7 out of 10, not a bad throw. Your form was a bit off, though.
Do you know why this is happening to you?
Because you threw me across the room? Wrong answer! Shion continues to throw her around, berating her as helpless, telling her that if she really is unhappy, then she might as well be dead.
If you're this unhappy, then get the hell out of here! Find a dark hole to crawl into and die!
Huh, I didn't know the voice in my head was in this episode.
As Satoko continues to cry, Shion grabs a chair, ready to bring it down on her, but Rika and Rena stand between them, just as Satoshi returns, knocking Shion aside.
What's wrong with you, Mion? Why would you do this?
What's wrong with you, Mion? Why would you do this to me, you sister? What you do to you, you big bimbo, you fucking bitch.
Tears streaming down his face, Satoshi laments on how the village treated his parents, and how Satoko and him face similar persecution now, even though they've done nothing wrong. Well, now I feel bad about taking the piss. That night, Shion and Mion talk on the phone, Mion pointing out the awkward situation Shion's now put her in. Shion questions if Satoshi has a grudge against the whole Sonozaki family, with Mion suspecting that he does. She wonders aloud why Satoshi didn't make his feelings towards her, and the family in general, more apparent when he intervened with the bullies. If he had, then she might not have fallen for him.
The reason he saved you, my dear mint-haired child, regardless of your lineage, is quite simple. Satoshi Hojo is Steve Rogers. I mean, not literally, of course. What I mean is he shares a very similar motive. He doesn't like bullies.
After God knows how many years of his parents being hounded by the village people, he knows what it's like to be ganged up on and how it feels. He probably doesn't want other people to feel the same way. So he wants to do everything in his power to stop others feeling like that. Even the granddaughter of the woman who turned an entire village on his own family. Even if it means wearing himself so thin that he becomes a hollow shell of his former self. He's not doing it because he wants to beat someone, or hurt someone, or because he wants to blame someone. It's not because it's fun, God knows it's not because it's easy. It's not even because it works, because it hardly ever does. He does what he does because it's right. Because it's decent. And above all, it's kind.
No, hold on. Sorry, that's a Doctor Who reference, but my point still stands.
He might not have the physical strength to take on those bullies, or even defend his sister from his abusive carers. But he has the will and the drive to protect people by any means necessary, even to his own detriment. And sure, we'll later see the kind of extremes he's pushed to try and make things right, and while I don't necessarily agree with his eventual actions, at the end of the day, I'd say he's still a good man. Same can't be said for Shion, as she wishes for Satoko and her aunt to disappear during the coming cotton drifting festival. I mean, the aunt I can understand, but come on, he's clearly doing everything for Satoko. Removing his incentive isn't going to make things better, it's only going to make things worse. Episode 2 begins the next night, as Mion calls Shion from a public phone, saying Satoshi had called her wanting to apologize. She thinks Shion should be the one to talk to him, passing on his phone number. Don't know why this had to be done from a public phone, but whatever. He picks up, sounding notably more tired than he has so far. He says that he'll never forgive the people who damned his parents, people who are likely very close to her, but he doesn't believe she's anything like them. Shion apologizes herself, saying she didn't think of things from his perspective. Asking how he's doing, Satoshi reveals he's quit his job, the final paycheck reaching the amount he needs, but he's still concerned for Satoko, saying she's barely hanging on. What she really needs is a night of fun to take her mind off things. So Satoshi asks if Mion, conditional clause, could look after her during tomorrow's cotton drifting. Shion agrees, but asks why he won't be able to do it himself, with Satoshi saying he has stuff to take care of. Rather seriously, he asks if she believes in Oyashiro, particularly about people being cursed for leaving the village, which Shion laughs off, in return asking if he's really thinking of going somewhere, which he denies. Before hanging up, he quickly says that he's leaving Satoko in her care. It's the day of the festival, and as the townfolk flock to the Furude shrine, we see Satoshi out in the woods by some old furniture, where he drops his trusty baseball bat. As the four girls hang out, Satoko doesn't seem to be enjoying herself. Rika tries to cheer her up, saying the thing troubling her the most will magically disappear by the end of the day, much to Satoko's confusion. We cut to a little bit later that evening, where the aunt is wandering through the forest, eventually finding the clearing with all the furniture in it, having apparently been told by Satoshi, thinking she can sell it. But Satoshi himself has another idea. Back at the festival, we see the tour guide from the previous arc running up to Kimiyoshi, the village leader, whispering something in his ear. He relays this information to Oreo, who appears unshaken, saying there's nothing they can do. What happened 3 times will happen a 4th. At the crime scene itself, Oishi asks the forensics team if they've been able to identify the victim, which they haven't, the aunt's face being completely smashed in. The officer with him believes they'll be able to identify her by her clothing if they ask the locals. Oishi reminds him that the chief wants the investigation to be kept secret, so to choose his words carefully. Clearly he's doing a bang-up job of it, as the next morning Shion and Mion are talking about the murder, somehow even knowing it's Satoshi's aunt. Shion asks if there's any suspects, but Mion isn't sure, only noting that Oishi is being particularly nosy, and likely thinks the murderer was a local. She then asks if Mion has any idea what Satoshi might have been doing on the night of the festival, but she isn't sure. Heading out, Shion, disguised as Mion, finds Satoshi looking at a stuffed bear, which he wants to get for Satoko's birthday, but isn't sure if it'll still be there when he gets his final paycheck. Taking some initiative, Mion goes in and puts a hold on it for him, with Satoshi having enough for a deposit.
When people see things they really want, they put a hold on it right away. The fact that it didn't even occur to you speaks volumes about you, Satoshi.
In what regard? The two share a cute moment together, but Satoshi gets distracted as Oishi and a couple of officers appear. He's been wanting to question Satoshi, but Shion gives a fake alibi, saying the pair of them were at Angel Mort yesterday, where the lies are sweet and the cover-ups are wonderfully impractical. Oishi laughs this off, saying there are multiple eyewitnesses who saw Mion at the cotton drifting yesterday, to which Shion reveals her true identity. Oishi doesn't immediately believe her, but Shion tells him to check the family registry, or even call Mion to prove it. Oishi steps away to confer with his officers, which they probably shouldn't do, cause now your suspects can iron out their alibi! Which they do!
You know, I might actually be a terrible cop.
Oishi, there's no might about it. Shion snaps Satoshi out of his trance, asking if he'll forgive her for lying. He figures out that this isn't the first time they've met, even apparently realizing that it was her in that alleyway. At least that's what the dub seems to imply.
Shion, you've got a nice name.
Aww, they're never going to get together. Oishi takes them to the police station, where they're questioned separately. As Shion waits outside, she's greeted by, assumedly, members of the Sonozaki Yakuza group, who put her in a car and drive her back to the house. There she's met by Mion, who leads her to the underground torture chamber. Well, they call it a shrine, but, you know, they call this a mallard, but a duck's a duck, you know. Inside, they find Oreo, their parents, and Kimiyoshi, along with all the torture equipment. Shion is greeted warmly.
Right. What did he say?
Said as his edge, huh? He only chopped him down because he couldn't see the view no more. What's he moaned about?
What did he say?
He said an edge is an edge. He only chopped it down because it spoilt his view. What's Reaper moaning about?
Right.
Okay, she doesn't say that, but who can resist a Hot Fuzz reference? Oreo calls her an idiot, having always wondered what disgrace Shion would bring, but never expected it to be with someone from the Hojo family. Shion tries to plead that Satoshi shouldn't be condemned for something his parents did, but Oreo is having none of it, saying the whole family are traitors. She even implies that Satoshi has made some foolish mistakes. And I'm not gonna lie, it's taken me 6 whole days to figure out she's talking about him killing his aunt. There is something about this arc that just turns my brain to mush, I swear. Shion believes that Mion must have told them everything out of simple jealousy that she has a crush. Laughing hysterically, like a sane person, Shion dismisses both her and Satoshi's connections to their families, openly admitting her love for him. Mion steps in, telling her that, while she knows how important this is for her, she's got to take responsibility for her actions, reminding her that, whether she likes it or not, she's still a Sonozaki, and the twin of the next head of the family, and leader of Hinamizawa. She says that Kazai and Uncle Yoshiro, the people who helped her, are in the room behind them, once again asking for Shion to take responsibility, apologize to Oreo, and all of this will be over. When Shion doesn't comply, Mion turns to leave, implying that if the well-being of Kazai and their uncle isn't enough to sway her, then they can easily get Satoshi involved too. Finally breaking, Shion begs forgiveness, Mion asking how they'll mark the occasion. I've never had to do one of these before, but if there was ever a scene that warrants one, it's this one. This next sequence is not for the easily faint of heart. Please use the timestamps below as well as the chapter selection to skip to the next scene if you do not want to watch this. Viewers' discretion is advised. A device used for removing fingernails is placed in front of Shion, Mion telling her that she'll need to remove 3 as penance, Shion believing they represent Kazai, Yoshiro, and Satoshi respectively. With Shion strapped in, she thinks back to Kazai, Yoshiro, and Satoshi, slamming down on the device, removing the first nail. As she tries her ring finger, she misses and only damages it instead. Mion's facade breaks for a second as she tries to calm her sister. With Shion uncontrollable, Mion beckons over the Yakuza thugs who brought her, restraining her and continue the procedure, with the screen fading to black. It's safe to say that this is one of, if not the most iconic scene in the whole franchise, and as such, it's evident a lot of care and attention was put towards it. A couple of shots here are a lot more fluid compared to the rest of the show. And I'm gonna stick my hand in the lion's mouth again, I think the voice acting is really good here for the dub. There is a bit where it doesn't match the lip flaps, but much like that ladder scene I talk about too much, it would have been a nightmare to try and match the dialogue to the animation. Regardless of whether it matches the clip or not, it is a good performance. I've said it before and I'll say it again, I really like this dub voice for Mion and Shion, and I can really feel the emotion behind this.
That being said, I don't find this scene as creepy or horrifying as I expect many other people do. Though through no fault of this adaptation.
As I've said, this is probably one of the most iconic scenes in the series for its raw emotion and what it represents. Hell, one of my friends who's more into horror has told me that he found this scene hard to watch.
I, on the other hand, can't say I really ever found it that bad. And if I did, then I've kind of forgotten about it. Probably doesn't help that when I was young, like really young, I jammed my thumb in one of those like sliding doors, and it went all black and started like coming off. My god, I was so stupid as a kid that when it came off, I put it under my pillow and actually got money from the nail fairy. I was a stupid fucking kid. I still am a stupid fucking kid.
Sometime later, back at her apartment...
Oh yeah, we should probably explain to the people who skipped what happened. So, Shion removed 3 of her fingernails. It's kind of gruesome. She then got picked up by Optimus Prime and was taken to space where she had to fight Darth Vader and the Klingon Empire, but with the help of the Avengers and Justice League, they were able to, like, you know, sort them all out. It was great. Absolute beautiful sequence. Winnie the Pooh was the MVP.
Sometime later, back at her apartment, Shion looks at her bandaged hand, before re-examining her lunch. She vomited. I don't know why I said it like that either. She narrates that Kazai and Yoshiro are safe, and that she's been forgiven, with the family telling her to forget about Satoshi. Heading into town, she notices that the bear he wanted is now gone, assuming he was finally able to get it. Irei passes by, mistaking Shion for Mion, which she promptly corrects him on, as Oishi... Ah!
Jesus Christ, man! What happened to your face?
The role of Oishi will now be played by Quasimodo.
Come into my tower, Esmeralda. It has air conditioning.
Oishi asks her if her hand is okay, advising her to not let it get infected. Shion realizing that he somehow knows what happened. He asks her to come down to the police station, where it's revealed that Satoshi has disappeared. We're told through narration that Oishi suspected him of killing his aunt, and he might not have been able to buy the bear after all. He believes that Satoshi is still alive somewhere, but Shion wasn't paying attention. A little bit later, in a very blink-and-you'll-miss-it scene, Kazai tells Shion that the police found the killer of Satoshi's aunt, some psychopath mimicking the previous year's events. Shion appears to believe this? ? Thinking Satoshi must have had some other role to play in keeping the curse alive for another year, as she clutches her bandaged hand, remarking that it still hurts. Would I be remiss if I said that the only bit I remember of that end scene is the part where she says it still hurts? Man, this arc just turns my brain to cheese. The next episode begins with Shion visiting Oishi, asking him for the real killer's identity. However, he tells her that the culprit is already dead, which somehow impedes Oishi divulging their identity.
Am I the only one who finds that weird? Why would the murderer's death matter if all you want is their identity?
In any case, sometime later, we find Shion at the library, going over the curse victims again, realizing they all had connections to the Sonozaki family through one means or another. She gets distracted by Takano, who's being a nosy bitch, but also divulges some of her own thoughts about the curse, particularly the part about the disappearances and how they're tied to each death, sort of like a sacrifice. Taking the conversation outside, for some reason, Takano goes over Hinamizawa's dark history, back when it was called Onigafuchi. I think I got that right, actually. I think I got that right first time. Have I said Onigafuchi before? I can't remember. Memory is a fickle thing. Shion's already aware of the stories that say human-eating demons lived there, but Takano asks her if she's aware of the... Here, I'll let her say it.
Have you heard the stories about the half-human, half-demon wizards who sometimes came down the mountain and kidnapped humans so they could feast upon them? Huh?
I don't know why, but every time Takano mentions the wizards, my brain just goes... I mean, I'm genuinely wondering if I'm becoming delirious while watching this.
In any case, she goes over the gory bits of the legend, where the cotton drifting originated from, noting that the true way to perform the ritual is to have the victims drown in Onigafuchi's swamp, Shion wondering if all the previous year's curse victims are there, including Satoshi. Takano allows Shion to borrow a couple of scrapbooks containing her notes on the subject before returning home. Sometime later, Mion comes to visit. They sit in awkward silence before attempting small talk. I just want to point out that Shion mentions she's going to a new school here, which, if I'm being completely honest, I can't remember being mentioned in any of my previous viewings. It's honestly never occurred to me that she actually went back to any kind of school after attending St. Lucia. I thought she just worked full-time at Angelmort. Mion eventually apologizes for the nail-ripping thing, Shion understanding that she was just doing what she had to do, even putting on a brave face and saying she's forgiven. Mion asks if she really can be, since she knew how much Shion liked Satoshi, Shion admitting that she did confess in front of a room full of people. Oreo is apparently impressed with Shion taking responsibility and believes she's learned her lesson.
I want to point out that the dub keeps using the words distinguished in these instances. Like, Shion, you must distinguish yourself. How are you going to distinguish yourself? And look, I've been following what the fandom wiki page has put, which is responsibility, and honestly, it just makes more sense. It makes more sense to me. But I don't know. I just wanted to mention that and put that out there.
After Shion bitterly dismisses what her grandmother thought, Mion asks if she knows what happened to Satoshi, awakening something deep within Shion.
That was the moment the demon inside awoke.
Mion tries to tell her that both she and the family don't know what happened to him.
Tell the truth! You had Satoshi spirited away by the demon, didn't you?
Nothing like a bit of girl on girl.
As Mion grabs Shion's wrist, she notices that Mion is also missing 3 nails. Mion tearfully explains that it didn't seem fair to her for Shion to be the only one punished. She'd gotten into a shouting match with Oreo, asking for Shion and Satoshi to be left alone, prompting Oreo to ask for Shion to take responsibility in order to be forgiven. Once that was done, the pair were free to go off and live their lives. But with Satoshi's disappearance, that obviously didn't happen. The Sonozakis have no idea what happened to him, Mion pleading that Shion believe her. Shion narrates that, for the time being, she was going to do so, forcing her demon back down, as well as burying all of her feelings for Satoshi as deep as she could. As an aside, this is probably one of my favourite scenes of this arc. Not for the girl-on-girl action, though that was a thing, but I really do feel the emotion behind this, with another great performance on the dub side by Mion and Shion's voice actress Megan Hollingshead. We have a little time skip, 1 year into the future, now in our usual time zone of June 1983. Shion narrates that nothing eventful happened in the elapsing time, until she finds herself in a very familiar situation. Except this time, instead of Satoshi saving her, it's our good old mentally sound pal Keiichi Maibara.
And you know what? It's weird to say, but I'm glad to see him again. Even with Go and Sotsu, it feels like a lifetime since I've seen him, and it's just... yeah, it's nice to see him. This is it. This is the turning point. The Keiichi shit train has left the station. All that's left now is me being okie dokie with the guy. It's got nothing to do with the fact that I'm voicing him now. This is a sign. This is a sign that this series has gone on long enough.
Instead of getting knocked on his ass, he's actually able to nimbly dodge an attack, tripping up the Nazi bully, before they're scared off by the sound of more people coming. Mistaking Shion for Mion, Keiichi goes up and comforts her. Sometime later, we see Mion and Shion hanging out, Mion gushing over how cool Keiichi is. Ugh, did I really just say that? It's obvious that Mion is crushing on him big time, notably detailing events similar to that of the opening episode of the Cotton Drifting arc. I haven't really explained this properly before. See, Higurashi's arcs are effectively split into two categories, or at least Series 1 and 2 is. Those being the question arcs, Spirited Away by the Demon, Cotton Drifting, and Curse Killing, and the answer arcs, Time Wasting, Eye Opening, Atonement, so on and so forth. In any case, each question arc has a corresponding answer arc, Eye Opening being the one to Cotton Drifting, which will become more apparent as we go. It isn't a one-to-one retelling of the events, again, as we'll see, but a lot can be inferred and implied / carried across between the two. I'll try to touch on notable ones as we go. As Mion excitably explains the events of the toy shop tournament, she becomes solemn when mentioning the consolation prize, the doll that Keiichi gave to Rena, admitting that she kind of wanted it.
I want to start over. I want to go back to the first time I met Keiichi. I want to go back in time and let him know that I'm a girl too.
Oh, if that isn't the biggest effing mood, then I don't know what is. The going back and starting over with your crush bit. Not the girl part.
Shion tries to comfort her sister, but she's up against some heavy competition.
You're right, Rena is way cuter than me.
That is true, but that's what you get when you compare yourself to Best Girl. But don't you worry, my dear. Going from your appearance to your personality to the fact that you're genuinely funny, you, my dear, you're waifu material.
Yeah, and she's got a nice bum. That too.
Shion begins teasing Mion, joking that they should compete for Keiichi's affections, causing Mion to start ranting and raving at her. Internally, Shion says she's happy for Mion, though jealous that she doesn't have that anymore. She knows Mion won't be chastised like she was for having a crush, and makes a conscious choice not to be envious. She also realises that it'll be a year since Satoshi disappeared soon, as well as the cotton drifting. We smash cut to an unspecified amount of time later, where the sisters are playing a game of tug-of-war with Keiichi. He had mistaken Shion as Mion, of course, and just so happened to have bumped into the gang. After a little teasing, Shion lets... I nearly said Satoshi there, good God. Shion lets Keiichi go, happy to take her leave. Keiichi thanks her for... whatever they did that day, patting her on the head and causing her to blush before she runs off.
Get out and stay out! Rena, you're on guard! Sonigo, set the traps! Rika, throw the salt!
I don't know, sir. You seem pretty salty enough as it is.
Shion stops a little way away, praying for Satoshi to forgive her, saying that she doesn't like Keiichi the same way she did him. After composing herself, she begins to walk away, before hearing an extra footstep, believing it to be Satoshi. We once again find ourselves at the Cotton Drifting Festival, where Shion literally bumps into Jiro and Takano, who are planning to break into the ritual tool shrine, inviting Shion to come along if she's interested. She wonders if she'll find any clue as to what happened to Satoshi in there, but is too afraid to go alone. So of course she enlists the support of the manliest man in Hinamizawa. But Rika was busy doing her ritual dance, so she had to settle for Keiichi. Similar to the Cotton Drifting arc, the two meet with Jiro and Takano, though a little more forwardly this time, heading inside and getting lectured about all the curse stuff. Of course, with this being from Shion's perspective, we hear her thoughts, damning Oyashiro if he's responsible for Satoshi's disappearance. Almost as in response, Shion starts to hear loud footsteps, initially believing them to be Satoshi's, before realizing they belong to something else. Seeking comfort from Keiichi's midriff, it becomes apparent that he and Takano can't hear the footsteps, just as Jiro enters, telling them it's time to head back. We get a brief shot of a party at the Sonozaki house, Shion looking sloshed in the corner. Later, it appears they've allowed her to stay the evening, as she awakes to find the bed next to her, assumedly Mion's, empty. Taking a stroll, she overhears Oreo and Mion talking about the police investigating something, and that Takano's angered Oyashiro. Putting two and two together, Shion realizes that Oyashiro's curse has struck for the 5th time. Assuming they know they snuck into the tool shrine, Shion tries to return to her room, but as a nearby phone rings, she realizes that something has watched her ever since she stepped into that sacred hall. She's forcefully turned around to be greeted by Mion's cold stare. Hey, what are you doing? Oh, just hanging around. Hanging around. Been up to much? Not really. Tread on the sacred ground of Oyashiro. No. I know you're lying to me. How do you know? It's a sacred temple filled with holy items. We fitted an alarm. Oh, probably should have thought about that. Restraining Shion, Mion answers the phone, telling the person on the other side to handle the situation and to keep things quiet. Shion tries to deny having heard Mion and Oreo's conversation, but Mion tells her anyway that Jiro and Takano are this year's curse victims. Fully believing the Sonozaki family are behind the early curse killings, Shion finally uses her taser, knocking out Mion. With newfound determination, Shion swears vengeance on the Sonozaki family in the name of Satoshi. We also see her taking out Oreo as she gets back into bed. Fascist? Hag. We get the same scene from the beginning of episode 1, with Shion dragging Mion into the dungeon, with Oreo tied up. It only occurs to me now that, seeing how no one else is apparently tied up and gagged, that Oreo and Mion are the only ones to live in that house. Am I weird for thinking there'd be more people than just, the two of them? Like, not even necessarily family members, but like servants or aides or, well, considering they're Yakuza, goons or something. Whatever, doesn't matter. With Mion locked up in a cell, and now in a dress for some reason, Shion compliments her on stuffing Takano in a barrel and burning her, which, even within context, is just a weird statement, but asks how they got Jiro to claw out his own throat. Mion denies knowing anything, but Shion doesn't believe her. She then asks if the annual murders are just the Dam War conflict persevering, which Mion admits she believes they are. While she may be next in line to lead the Sonozaki family, right now, she's just a spokeswoman for Oreo, suspecting that there's someone else who actually carries out the curse stuff. Shion reminds her that Jiro and Takano aren't connected to the Dam War, and asks if they were sacrificed for entering the Tool Shrine, which Mion seems genuinely surprised to learn about, remarking that, if true, their fates were inevitable. Shion comments that, according to the curse rules, one person dies while the other disappears, and so wonders why both Jiro and Takano ended up dead, to which Mion isn't sure about, wondering aloud if there was actually 4 people who went in, guessing that those other 2 are likely targets to get spirited away. Shion now heads over to Oreo in the other room. She believes her gran is pretending to be asleep, but after wafting a lighter in front of her face, it becomes apparent that Oreo is dead, without a final word or an apology to Satoshi. Also, thank you Studio Dean for giving me some new nightmare fuel. Shion takes the passing of Oreo surprisingly well. I miss my gran. What? It's no correlation to this. Then why did you say it? Oh look, even more nightmare fuel. Butt stuff. Dude, time and a place. Once again, Shion hears the sound of footsteps, wondering aloud if it's Oyashiro.
Ha! Only an idiot would believe that!
I know for a fact it's Satoshi, my totally legit boyfriend who's definitely not dead and definitely shares my affections.
Using Oreo as leverage, Shion asks Mion about the location of a hidden well. That also just so happens to have a passage that leads to the outside world, but that's not important. Yet. Mion points her in the right direction, discovering a hole. Shion asks Mion if she's ever been down there, to which she says she has no desire. No wonder, considering that the hole is where they supposedly dispose of all the bodies, which Shion intends to do to Oreo. Wondering why Shion would do all this, Mion realizes she wants revenge for Satoshi, though Shion does admit she has another reason. It's because Oreo lied about being forgiven after losing those 3 fingernails. She accuses Mion of permeating that lie, when she told her the Sonozakis didn't have a problem with Satoshi anymore, and didn't know anything about his disappearance. Mion tries to defend herself, but Shion is having none of it, kicking Oreo's lifeless corpse. She eventually composes herself, saying that Mion shouldn't have anything to worry about. If she's told the truth, that is.
But if I find out you were lying to me too, well then, no matter how much you scream, your fate is sealed.
Come the morning, Kimiyoshi rings the house phone, asking to speak to Oreo. Shion, pretending to be Mion, says she's sleeping and that she'll take a message for her. Kimiyoshi says that an emergency meeting of the village leaders is being held that evening to go over what happened yesterday. The phone immediately rings again, this time from Kazai. She pretends to hand the phone over to herself. Yeah. As he asks if she has a way to get back home, which she tells him not to worry about. She also tells him about Jiro and Takano being sacrificed, even admitting that she and Keiichi entered the shrine with them. She tries to worm her way out of taking responsibility again, saying that she never really grew up in Hinamizawa, so isn't familiar with its rules and customs. While Kazai says he's on her side, there's just some rules you can't break. As such, she's on her own. Making an excuse to end the conversation, she tries to calm herself down. She believes the best course of action is to impersonate Mion and pretend that Shion has disappeared as part of the curse. The only person to worry about is Keiichi, deciding to use him as prey to lure out the enemy. We get a similar scene to the one in Cotton Drifting, where Shion, disguised as Mion, rocks up, looking more tired than usual, playing it off as a hangover from the previous night.
You've got a hangover? How old are you anyway?
You think I look bad? You should have seen me, I mean Shion, last night. Girl got absolutely shwasted, started singing some random-ass song about a boy she once liked. 'Cause baby, when I heard you for the first time, I knew we were meant to be one. To be us, baby, when I...
Corley, it's Marvin! Your cousin, Marvin Malone? You know that new sound you're looking for? Well, listen to this!
Satoshi Kun, I love you!
The scene plays out the same, but when she questions if he saw Shion last night, and Keiichi tells her that she already asked him, she concludes that Mion must have known about the break-in before she told her. She proceeds to spook him before running off, practically reveling in making him squirm. Arriving at the shrine, she attends the emergency meeting. She doesn't really pay attention to anything until they start talking about the murders. She's forced to speak on behalf of Oreo, putting on a very good authoritative act, telling those present about the break-in and how Jiro and Takano have been dealt with. A couple members, including Kimiyoshi himself, say they got what they deserved. While shocked at his reaction, Shion concludes that whoever carries out the curse killings is in this room. There's an abrupt cut to the end of the meeting, where Shion asks Kimiyoshi to come by the house. Later, as they've arrived, she tells him that Oreo wants to talk about... her. Shion. Does that make sense? Good God, these tenses are confusing. He asks where Shion is, with her lying, saying she's in the basement. He sighs, saying she knew not to go in there, with Shion saying that while she knew it was wrong, she didn't think it was a big deal. Kimiyoshi asks if she thinks Shion is sorry, which she says she does, but is worried about being spirited away like Satoshi was. Kimiyoshi promises that he'll make sure that doesn't happen, which brings the first genuine smile to her face in a while, having her metaphorical grandpa on her side.
I really doubt she'll experience the same fate as that Hojo brat.
Did you just say Hojo brat?
Well, he's certainly filling the bigoted grandpa role nicely. Confused why he'd feel like this, Shion says she thought the whole Hojo thing had been let go after the nail ripping last year. Only for him to reveal that those 3 nails represented forgiveness to Kazai, Uncle Yoshiro, and Shion herself. She takes this news well. Episode 5 begins halfway through the phone conversation Shion and Keiichi had, where she tells him for the first time that Jiro and Takano are dead. For anyone trying to follow the timeline of events, this is after they tried to chat in the library before Oishi appeared. I think. I could be wrong. It doesn't really matter. In any case, as Keiichi goes to blame Shion, she hangs up the phone.
My God, you can really be annoying.
Okay, I genuinely love that line delivery. In any case, she then calls the Kimiyoshi house, posing as Mion, and asks if he's arrived yet, sparking a search for him, even offering to help herself, before hanging up on them as well. Shion Sonozaki, not the best at phone etiquette.
You're yummy.
At least buy me dinner first, jeez! As we find ourselves once again in the Sonozaki Fungeon, I find myself questioning the geography of some of these locations. See, the Sonozaki house is in Hinamizawa, no duh, where all the previous episode's events took place. But Shion, for some reason, thought it was necessary to return to her own flat in Okinomiya to have those phone calls only to then return to the Sonozaki house so we can get this next scene. I mean, we know there's a perfectly good phone at the family home already. Why not just use that? Watch as it turns out that this is something to do with the visual novel version of events. But for some reason, Studio Dean didn't decide to change the locations for whatever reason. Even though, to my understanding, they've already changed some small events in previous arcs to fit this narrative. Then again, Shion is cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs right now, so maybe she just thought it was the best idea. Or maybe she really likes the hour-long bike ride between the two places, I don't fucking know. I need more happy juice. Anyway, since Shion has Kimiyoshi hanging around, she decides to question him. Like she's done to every single bloody person in this arc. Good God. Once he's been loosened, he tells her that he doesn't think he has the answers she's looking for, not even knowing if Satoshi is actually alive or not, though he believes that he's probably dead. Shion takes this to mean that Satoshi wasn't taken away for killing his aunt, but simply for the prejudice of being a Hojo. Kimiyoshi points out that the official report was that the aunt was murdered by a copycat killer, but Shion thinks he was a scapegoat, which Kimiyoshi says doesn't make sense, since having Satoshi spirited away would keep the investigation open longer. The only person who would try to instigate a scapegoat is Oreo. Interestingly, and something I legitimately never noticed until this rewatch, is that Kimiyoshi actually mentions the kidnapping of the Dam Construction Minister's grandson from the previous arc, suspecting that Oreo did indeed have him kidnapped. I'm not even joking, so much is said during this arc that it all just becomes white noise, and just nothing, I just can't retain anything. And I'll be completely honest, if I was covering the sub for this series, I'm positive I'd be even more lost, and that version has fucking words on screen. In any case, Shion finally asks the big question as to who had Satoshi spirited away, with Kimiyoshi admitting he doesn't know, that there's an unwritten law to never ask who committed the act. Unsatisfied, she instead asks where they would hide a body so it can't be found. Without answering, Kimiyoshi looks towards the dungeon, the truth finally dawning on Shion. He's in the hole. Heading to the well, Shion calls down for Satoshi, but there's no response. I mean, if he's been thrown down the dead body pit, then he wouldn't exactly be in the best condition to call back up, would he? Falling to her knees, she drops her torch, casting a shadow onto the wall in front of her, which she believes is Satoshi. His voice tells her exactly what she wants to hear, that she's finally found him, and that she didn't do anything wrong. Ha! Ha! Yeah, sure, yeah,
I'm gonna join you, and you and I can be together forever! I'll jump, Satoshi! All you have to do is be there to catch me!
Yes! Do it! Let's get this story over with!
No.
You stay out of this, you ghostly blonde bimbo!
But why?
I think you've got the wrong idea of our relationship. What? I only ever saw you as a friend. Maybe a sister or something, but nothing else. What? I'm redonkulously gay. You sunk my battleship.
Well, you're not wrong. I do like boats. Where the fuck am I? Okay, that didn't happen. The voice tells her to keep living. But I do legitimately believe that he doesn't have any romantic feelings towards her. Makes her story just that little bit more tragic, and I live for it. Shion slowly makes her way over to Mion's cell, saying she's found Satoshi, to which Mion agrees that that's the only place she can think of too. She says she wasn't present when the kill order was given, otherwise she would have fought to stop it. But after a brief flashback to the nail removal scene, Shion brands her a liar, banging on her cell. We smash cut to the next day, where Shion, disguised as Mion, is feeling sleepy. Or is she?
What's the matter? Are you sleepy today? Are you? Is she?
What does yawning mean?
Ren Ryugu, Hinamizawa's greatest detective. Though to be fair, there wasn't much competition.
Yeah, I didn't get to bed last night until almost 3.
Ha! Lightweight. I can stay up till 3 in the morning and be completely...
The bounce is gone from his bungee.
Scarlett Johansson.
They head to school, where they meet Rika and Satoko. Oh god, when was the last time the whole gang was on screen together? I mean, they still technically aren't, since this is Shion and all, but semantics. Shion remembers that Rika is the last of the Furude family, and so the current head, but doesn't believe she has anything to do with the curse. Regardless, come break time, she pulls Rika aside and asks what she knows. She is aware of Jiro's death, leading Shion to believe that she's more involved than at first glance. She says the job isn't done yet, since Keiichi and Shion still haven't been punished, but Rika doesn't think it really matters, so long as they're sorry. Shion starts manhandling the child, basically saying you're dumb and your opinions are trash. Rika clearly understands how important the shrine is, and agrees those who went in did wrong. Though she words it like this.
You're right, they're bad little kitties. Meow. Yes, they are bad kitties indeed.
As someone who used to work with kids, I understand that level of frustration. It's bloody great.
When asked how the two should take responsibility, Rika says they should just let them go, which angers Shion, saying they should distinguish themselves.
Mion, listen, you keep using this word distinguish and I don't know what it means.
I don't think the dubbing team knows what it means either. I mean, if I went outside and I saw a guy in like a top hat with a cravat and like a velvet jacket, a walking stick, big fancy moustache, I'd be like, oh hey, that's a distinguished individual. Here, it's like, I get what they mean, but there are better words. There are so many better words. Tell you what though, this gives me the opportunity to use a Princess Bride reference.
You keep using that word. I don't think it means what you think it means.
Shion says Rika can't say that it's all okay or not, to which Rika reminds her that she's Oyashiro's priestess, so she kinda can.
Are you telling me Oyashiro speaks to you or something? That he tells you who to curse and who not to?
Bitch! You have no fucking idea what I have to put up with! Oh, for the love of you, not now!
Shion slaps Rika, saying that Keiichi is the only one left who needs to be taken care of, and Rika will make sure it happens, even though she says she doesn't know what to do. Shion concludes that if anything happens to Keiichi, then Rika is as guilty as Oreo, and will make sure her death is as painful as possible.
Hey, I wrote you a song!
What?
It goes along something like this! You're a bitch!
Later, at the Sonozaki house,
I wonder if Kimiyoshi is dead yet or not.
I'm alive!
All the people I love just disappear one by one.
Maybe I'm the problem. Nah!
Satoko should have died instead.
Way to jump the gun there, Chief! Or jump the knife?
The doorbell rings as Rika comes to get some soy sauce.
Ah yes, that famous Sonozaki sauce. Gonna take that sauce by force. Yo girl know I got the sauce. No ketchup. Just sauce. Raw sauce.
As she leads Rika through the house, she notices that she can't hear her footsteps, wondering if she's messing with her. In the storeroom, Shion tells her to take as much as she likes. But as Rika stares at her, she's ambushed by a pepper spray. Holding Shion down as best she can, Rika produces a needle.
Girl, you're gonna feel a little prick.
Shion causes Rika to spray and inhale some of the mace, throwing her off and drawing her taser. She causes a distraction with a convenient pile of paper, knocking Rika to the floor, grabbing the syringe and injecting her with it instead. As Rika writhes with pain, Shion gleefully suggests taking their little match down to the torture room. As Rika acquires a knife. In a voice much older than her own, she calmly declines the offer, saying she's going to leave. Shion points out she's in no condition to even stand, let alone fight. With Rika saying they have a different definition of leaving. And so we find ourselves back here. This is my other favourite scene of this arc, and credit where credit's due, this is great, and Rika's final line is just oozing with badassery, even for someone who's lost. Anyway, as Shion covers the body with newspaper, Satoko phones the house, asking if Rika is still there. Shion invites her to come over for dinner, saying Rika has already started. Satoko agrees, sticking the food she's already prepared in the fridge and heading over as soon as she can. We head into the final episode as Shion is seen calling Keiichi, pretending to be a hysterical mess, saying she told Kimiyoshi about entering the shrine and that having caused him to have disappear, leading Keiichi to believe that the same will happen to Rika, having halfway told her earlier that day. It's honestly pretty neat when you compare this scene to its cotton drifting counterpart, to see both characters' perspectives of the same conversation. Keiichi wetting his pants over potentially putting Rika in danger, and Shion just being pants-wettingly terrifying. I gotta say, it's also pretty neat how they recolored the same shots for the different arcs. More vibrant colours for cotton drifting, when we assume she's phoning from her flat, and the truer, muddier colours that make up the Sonozaki residence for eye-opening. Not gonna lie though, I find it kind of odd that she's dressed in her normal casual outfit. Sure, she got blood on her, but it's not like Keiichi can see what she's wearing or anything. There is also an argument to be made about actually showing misleading clips of Shion in the cotton drifting version of this scene. But it's not too egregious to take up time here. This video's gonna be long enough as it is. I'll try and remember that point for a different time. But anyway, we jump cut to Rena, Keiichi, and Shion, disguised as Mion, arriving at Sadako and Rika's house. Rena heads off to check the main Furude house, while Shion grabs a ladder. Oh great, here we go. The scene plays out pretty much like last time, though we hear Shion's internal thoughts, as she wonders if the reason Satoko was spared was because of her friendship with Rika. And cue the ladder shaking. Yeah, 3 years later, and this still looks silly to me. Shion's internal monologue not helping either. Again, this is a difficult scene to stage, and I don't blame the studio for the final product. I'm more than sure they did the best they could. The scene ends the same as before, but with the added bonus of Shion reminding herself that, with Rika dead, there's no one left to order the curse. Except her.
Perfect.
Should I be concerned about the face you're making right now? Because I am.
As more people get involved with the search, we cut to later that night, as some of them begin to wonder who realised Rika was missing first, with Shion saying it was Keiichi, causing the townfolk to become suspicious.
I make one little statement and now Keiichi is the main suspect! How perfect is that?
Hey, Ida. Yes, Yuya? Does Mion seem... okay to you? Well, I didn't want to say anything, but she is looking a little green. Nah, she's always like that. Oh! Oishi appears and... oh my god. What is up with Shion's face? But yeah, he's suspicious of her. And with a face like that, who wouldn't be? Fucking hell. And I'm gonna throw in another content warning here. I actually had to take a 6-hour break while writing this after digesting the arc over the course of a number of weeks. If you don't feel up to this, skip this segment. I honestly don't blame you. Back in the basement, Shion has chained Satoko to a cross. And considering that St. Lucia is apparently a Christian school, raises a lot of interesting implications. I mean, that is if Shion is actually Christian or not. I honestly have no idea. I mean, I went to Christian school and I came out of it agnostic at best. It's implied that Satoko actually watched Kimiyoshi finally pass away, as Shion drops all pretenses and just admits she's going to kill her. Mion cries out from her cell, asking for Satoko to be forgiven for whatever she's done, with Shion just ignoring her and repeatedly stabbing the child. Shion toys with her sister, saying if she says sorry 1,000 times, then she'll let Satoko go. As Mion hurriedly screams sorry over and over again, Shion continues her... there's not even a word for it, she just continues. Satoko begins crying out for her Nini, as Shion taunts her about having been a burden on him, and how he isn't going to come and save her now.
Satoshi isn't your knight in shining armor who'll always be there, nor is he... He's just like you.
I've been trying really hard not to throw around the word villain, because I know how people will react. But I'm sorry. Shion Sonozaki, you're a fucking villain.
Sadako admits that, yeah, she used to rely on her brother, even though she knew he wasn't doing well himself, but she just couldn't let go. But she's sure he's going to come back. And when he does, she's going to show him how much she's grown. Until then, no matter what Shion does to her, she's not going to cry. Not to someone as pathetic as her. During this, Shion begins stabbing her again, but after being called pathetic, she lands her final blow. Satoko is dead. The clatter of her knife as it hits the ground causes Shion to believe Satoshi is talking to her again, as she remembers the conversation they had before last year's cotton drifting. That he wanted her to look after Satoko.
Satoshi will never come back to me after what I've done!
Gee, you think?
Cackling like the maniac she is, she fully embraces that the only thing left in her now is the demon. If I've got the timeline right in my head, we jump forward about a day to when Keiichi and Rena confront Shion at the Sonozaki house. Although Shion's internal monologue suggests that it's just the next day. Which isn't exactly impossible. Satoko's death could have happened the same day as Keiichi's phone call with Shion, where he figures her out. Honestly, it doesn't matter. The scene plays out in a more condensed fashion, with some minor dialogue changes, just to illustrate that Oishi is waiting outside the main gates with officers, looking for an excuse to storm the place. Shion requests alone time with Keiichi, Her psyche is so broken at this point that she can't tell if she's Mion or Shion anymore. Only one word lingers. Demon. She offers to show Keiichi everything she's done, but that there's nothing he can do to fix it. Keiichi doesn't care though, saying Mion Sonozaki is one of the best friends he ever had. As he pats her head, she gets flustered, feeling like she can't even relate to these people anymore, but can kind of understand why Mion liked him. She takes him down to the fungeon, rocks him like a hurricane, ties him down, and gets ready to nail him.
Okay, I know that wasn't supposed to sound sexual, but...
The scene plays out like before, even saying that this is Keiichi's fault because he didn't give the doll to Mion, which reminded Shion of her feelings towards Satoshi. I still think he made the logical decision, giving it to the person who clearly wanted it, but that's neither here nor there. Oishi storms the Sonozaki house. Shion tases Keiichi, same stuff as before, until we see Shion opening Mion's cell.
But you and I aren't finished yet, and I still need to escape.
At the hole, Shion and Mion have swapped clothes. Shion tells Mion to head down there and apologize to Satoshi, only for Mion to reveal that she knows Satoshi isn't down there. When she went to confront Oreo about letting Satoshi off, Oreo told her that the Sonozakis don't have anything to do with the curse killings, and that, by that point, she had blessed Shion and Satoshi's relationship. Shion doesn't believe this, since all the murders connected back to the Sonozaki family in some way. But Oreo thought that was weird herself, with everyone she asked denying being involved. Meaning Shion has been murdering a cavalcade of people for no reason. And decides to add one more to the pile, not believing her sister's final words, tasing her and watching her drop into the hole. Shion falls to her knees, eventually getting picked up and mistaken for herself? She's mistaken as the innocent one and carried out of the dungeon, along with Keiichi. Sometime later, in her apartment, dressed as Mion for some reason, Shion hears the voices of her victims, tormenting her, reaching out to her. Seemingly forgetting what a front door is, Shion escapes via the balcony.
You'll never catch me!
Ghosts can't go through doors, stupid. They're not fire.
We get that scene from Cotton Drifting where she goes to Keiichi's house and stabs him, proclaiming she's killed everyone she needed to kill, all in the name of Satoshi. As she returns to her flat, which I want to remind people takes about an hour by bike, so we've just skipped 2 whole hours in a matter of seconds. Still forgetting what a door is, she tries to climb back in from the balcony, but gets her shirt snagged on something, loses balance, and falls. Our story ends with Shion plummeting to her death, asking forgiveness from everyone she killed.
Please forgive me. Next time, I won't make the same mistake.
When I said, where do I even begin with this, in the Cotton Drifting retrospective, I was joking. I was playing it up for comedic effect. When I say, where do I even begin with this here, I mean it. I legitimately mean it. I don't know what I just watched. Let me just start by reiterating that I'm aware I can come across rather negative in these analysis sections. This can give the impression that I don't like what I've just watched. And that can't be further from the truth. I love Higurashi's story, I love these characters, and I love this show. I don't think there's a legitimately bad arc as far as I've seen, par the penalty-loving chapter arc episode thing from Kira. That's where the Satoshi Keiichi clip came from. But I'd be lying if I didn't admit that this has been, and is certainly going to continue being, my least favourite arc. Not to say that there aren't any good moments. I've tried to be fair and give credit where I believe it's due. And while my brain melted during this whole process, I am more than aware of the nuance of this story. This is the story of someone who's been pushed to the edge, faced fundamentally pointless retribution their entire life for simply existing. Not to mention losing the, conditional clause, only person who ever really cared for them, and seeking justifiable revenge. This is not a bad story. And yet, and this is entirely subjective, based on my personal feelings, tastes, and opinions, this arc starts off very dialogue and lore heavy, which maybe isn't the best coming off the back of the other lore heavy arc, so my attention is already hanging on by a thread, and divulges into, well, a gratuitous torrent of torture porn, with almost little to no breathing room in between. And when they do, it's another exposition dump. When I've previously watched this arc, which at this point is roughly over 4 years ago now, at least, this has been the arc that I've effectively tuned out of the most, or potentially even just blanked from my memory. I never really had any strong opinions on Satoshi until I sat down and wrote this retrospective. I never really noticed the mental gymnastics you have to perform to remember characters' conflicting thoughts and theories pertaining to the multitude of topics presented in this arc. I haven't felt this numb watching an arc before, both for my own enjoyment and for these more analytical rewatches until I sat down to do this. I'm not joking when I say I'm struggling to remember what actually happened in this arc. I know I watched it multiple times. But when I try to visualize scenes and situations that I know happened in it, nothing comes to mind. Nothing sticks. And that's after watching it for almost 40 days straight while writing the script for this. And I bet, no matter how long it takes for me to finish this video, whenever it's done, I will forget everything again. Almost everything again. But it won't feel like I've missed anything. You know what I mean? What I will say in this arc's favour is that it is a very good companion piece to Cotton Drifting. It really establishes the idea of these question and answer arcs, even if it did cause my brain to liquefy for whatever reason. It does provide answers to some questions from that arc, and I'd argue makes the Cotton Drifting arc more entertaining by proxy. One of the neat things about going back to Cotton Drifting is trying to figure out which of the sisters is actually currently in a scene. Like, when Shion gives Keiichi that lunchbox, that's clearly Mion disguised as Shion, backed up by real Shion's reaction when he returns it to her. It also means that those psycho crazy moments we thought were Mion in Cotton Drifting was just her bonkers banana pants sister instead. Mion's a good girl. Or would-be best girl, if you will. You know, if she wasn't in the same show as Renna, that is. Sorry, I'm biased. Actually, I believe that in the visual novels, so citation needed here, but in Curse Killing, when Keiichi phones Mion to look after Satoko during the festival, while he goes and kills Teppei, that's meant to be Shion dressed as Mion, for whatever reason, commenting on the fact that Satoshi asked her to do the same the year before. This doesn't happen in the anime, likely removed for either time constraints or because it doesn't really matter in that arc's grander story. and I honestly don't blame them for doing that. I understand there's a number of changes between the visual novel and anime, and likely the manga too. Considering there's 3 different continuities, I try not to cross the streams in regards to certain tidbits. While the visual novels and manga do arguably explain things better, I do actually legitimately enjoy the ambiguity of the anime. And even in some major plot points, prefer how things play out here than they do in other mediums. But I've always considered myself an animation guy first when it comes to comics and manga and live action and junk. What was the point I was trying to make? One thing that I do find kind of questionable, however, is something that isn't mentioned in this arc or in the anime at all. But people have asked if I can actually talk about this. So here we go. While it's never mentioned in the anime, in the visual novels and manga, it's stated that Mion and Shion aren't their birth names. The one we know as Shion was born first and named Mion, while the one we know as Mion was the second born and named Shion. Yeah, let's try and wrap our liquid brains around this. Growing up, the pair would regularly swap places, believing it to be unfair that one of them had to attend all these ceremonies and meetings and stuff, while the other got to have fun. It just so happens that the younger sibling was the one branded with the demon tattoo, as is customary for the next leader of the Sonozaki family. Now, with a clear way to identify which one is which, the younger sibling, Shion, took the name and identity of Mion and vice versa. I'm not entirely sure if the family in general are aware that they swapped at a young age. Presumably not. Hell, I'm not entirely sure if the twins themselves actually remember they swapped sometimes. There's this one bit, very late game in the manga, where the one we know as Shion reminds the one we know as Mion that she's the older sister. And the artwork for Mion's expressions suggests, to me at least, that this is a revelation to her, and she never knew about it. Who knows, maybe she has a liquid brain too. If I'm being completely honest, I don't mind this being omitted from the anime. This just feels like another pointless layer to their backstory. I'm more than fine with them swapping places as kids, that's completely fine. But what does this detail actually add? I'm serious. What is actually added with the knowledge that the one we know as Shion was born Mion and vice versa? In fact, it kinda conflicts with Shion's opening monologue, where she's talking about being outcast from the family and wondering why she was even spared as a baby. That wasn't you. You would have lived regardless of what happened. I don't know. I'm sure people will shout at me in the comments about it regardless. Whatever. I should probably comment on Shion's characterization in this story. For years, she's been classed as a particular anime trope, called a yandere, typically referring to a character who is, how do I put it, hopelessly head over heels in love with someone, and will do anything to be with that person. Like murder. I can understand why people would class Shion as a yandere. She pretty much says she's killing people for Satoshi. But I don't think she is one. The way I see it, a yandere will do anything to be with the person they like, making them a very proactive character. Shion's actions are entirely reactive. While she does still beat Satoko up while he's around, though that to me feels more like her trying to teach Satoko a lesson, in a very poor way, she doesn't commit any of the more stereotypical yandere acts until after Satoshi goes MIA. And let's be completely honest, if we were to label one of the characters in Higurashi as a yandere, it's not Shion. But we might get to that. I've never really known what to think about Shion, honestly. I found it very hard to disconnect her from her OTT torture personality, and even with everything that happens to her before all that, I just don't sympathise with her. I understand her pain, I understand her struggle, but I just don't sympathise with her.
So the problem I get when this arc really dives into its torture scenes is a character who I don't really feel anything towards, doing horrible things to characters who I don't really care about.
Oreo was only briefly introduced properly in the previous arc, along with Kimiyoshi for that matter, so I don't really have any connection to them. While I do care about Mion, she's ultimately physically unharmed, all her torture is mental. And then you get Satoko. And as I've previously said, she wasn't particularly high on my list of favourites to begin with. Again, not that I hate her outright. She's simply that low by process of elimination. However, unlike Shion, Oreo and Kimiyoshi, I can sympathise with her. And it really does fucking suck when this poor child, who's already gone through hell, has to be put through this.
Rika doesn't get tortured, thank God, but... And I did initially have a sort of kind of joke about this before removing it. But any and all depictions of Rika with a knife does weirdly impact me, in ways that I don't quite understand. It only seems to happen with Rika as well, strangely enough. I feel it, is the best way to describe it. Yeah.
The eye-opening arc damn near killed this retrospective series, for better or worse. And almost like clockwork, as I write and read this, I can't think of anything from the arc to really talk about, or mention, or justify, or defend, or back up, or anything. When it comes to an eventual rewatch of this series, which, God knows whenever that's going to happen, if Curse Killing doesn't put me off by making me feel a little depressed, and time wasting doesn't put me to sleep, this will either kill the marathon, or I'll spend 6 episodes on my phone only looking up to watch the bits that I actually want to watch. Or I will just legit skip it, because I think you only need to watch it once to get the gist that the Sonozakis aren't responsible for the curse stuff. I know this is a lot of people's favourite arc. I am super aware of that, and I respect your opinions. But at the end of the day, this is just not for me. I don't want to watch a horrible person do horrible things to horrible people, and then revel in it. I get the nuance, I get Shion's struggle, but I just don't want to watch this. And the fact that I've had to for the last 40 days to write this, and then God knows how many more it will take to edit this, is more than enough to last me a lifetime. Again, I'm sorry if this is not the reaction you wanted, but this is how I feel. And I am honestly glad to see the back of this arc. I mean, I'll give it this. As I've been questioning whether I actually want to continue doing this, going through Higurashi, through its second series and beyond, this has made a very strong argument for me to stop. I haven't enjoyed myself. And if you don't enjoy something, give it up. Quite simple. While I still haven't decided whether or not I want to continue the retrospective into Series 2, I should know when next we meet. For the arc that I've been looking forward to the most, over what will be the last 5 years. So please, take my hand and join me next time as Rena Ryugu tries to achieve her perfect world, and we see if friendship is thicker than blood. In the series final, the Atonement arc. Chills. Literal chills. Once again, I hope you enjoyed this. To say that this was difficult to do is a frickin' understatement. But I do hope this turned out alright. I will say, before people disappear, I will not be giving an ETA for when the Atonement arc retrospective will be going live. I want to make this good. I want to make this legitimately good. I want to make this stand the test of time. I want it to be the best retrospective I can ever possibly do. And to do that, I'm going to have to work my arse off on it. So, simply put, it will be done when it's done. If you're looking for a more informative and just better video for detailing Shion and her characterization, then I highly recommend, I need to check the name here, I highly recommend Best Sonozake's video talking about the deconstruction of the yandere trope, specifically around Shion, which will be linked in the card as well as at the very end of the video. Bess does some amazing Higurashi videos. I need to catch up on a couple myself, actually. It's almost as if she actually knows the franchise, rather than just being some twit on the internet. Obviously, if you're one of the people who are watching Higurashi for the first time through this retrospective, then do please be wary of spoilers, but they are there for you to enjoy, and I highly recommend them. And as I mentioned earlier in the video, I will also be linking the first episode of Higurashi Abridged when that goes live. Do please check it out, it would mean the world to all of us at Studio Weebo 7. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you enjoy existence? This got deep for no reason. I've been Michael Crewe from Crewe on the Sofa. You already knew that. And until next time, when the Higurashi cry.